Welcome into the November 17th episode of the Lockdown Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. The Maple Leafs are back in action tonight as they're hosting the Red Hot Devils, who come into Scotiabank Arena on a 10-game heater, Dave. We will be joined by Locked On Devils host Trey Matthews to break down tonight's game. All that more coming up on today's edition of Locked On Leafs.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, one-stop shop for all things Leafs. I'm your host, Mike DiStefano from TSN 1050 Toronto Radio, also known as Al's brother on TSN's Overdrive and TSN 1050's Leafs Lunch. Joining me is my co-host, Dave Morassutti from Sportsnet, also a writer for the NHLPA. Locked On Leafs is a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast, so be sure to subscribe for free wherever you get your podcast from. You can also now catch us up on video on YouTube. Just search up Locked On Leafs on YouTube. Hit subscribe and get daily Leafs content directly to you. It's another Leafs game day today with the Devils in town. 10 games in a row that they've won, David. 10 games in a row, and they're one of the best teams in hockey right now. The Leafs are going to have their hands full, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a team that's won as many games as the Devils had, like they've been the surprise team in the NHL this year. Like no one expect them to go on a 10-game winning streak like they have. They have obviously some very exciting players: Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Dougie Hamilton. It's not going to be an easy task for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And keep forgetting that Lindy Ruff is the coach of that team.
Yes, old Lindy. The guy was booed like after the first two games of the year. They went on to go 13-1 since then. 13-1 since losing their first two games of the season, and then after being booed, then they actually chanted like a couple of days ago, "Thank you, Lindy," or "Sorry, Lindy," one of the two. I think it was "Sorry, Lindy," apologizing for booing him at the beginning of the year when they just need a little bit longer to get their legs underneath them. But they're coming into Toronto and they're coming in red hot. I'm excited to see what Matt Murray has in store for his encore performance after getting his first victory as a Maple Leaf the other night in Pittsburgh. And to join us to chat about tonight's game, it's going to be Trey Matthews from Locked On Devils. So why don't we bring him into the conversation, Dave?
Let's do it.
All right, as we mentioned before, we are now going to be joined by Trey Matthews, the host of Locked On Devils, with Toronto taking on the New Jersey Devils tonight, a team that is red hot, rolling, winners of 10 in a row. To use the words of Jack Hughes, is they're on a heater right now, is what he's talking about. Trey, first and foremost, what's going on? How you enjoying your boys going out there and really just taking care of business night in, night out?
You know, Mikey, it's really some sort of phenomenon in Newark, New Jersey. The New Jersey Devils, like you just said, winners of 10 straight. And just to add on to what you said about Jack Hughes and being on a 9-game heater, I love Jack Hughes and all. I love what he does on the rink, but interviews are not really his forte. He's not really a reporter kind of person.
Oh, loved it. I loved it, honestly. Like someone's trying to pick apart their game, and he's like, I think we're doing all right. We're on a 9-game heater since then, 10 games in a row at that win over Montreal. I personally was a fan of that comment.
Yeah, he's kind of awkward in interviews, but he is inadvertently one of the funniest guys on the team. But going back to the New Jersey Devils, I certainly did not anticipate for them to be this good. I was saying fringe playoff team because – the ultimate goal for the New Jersey Devils going into the season was, and this might confuse some of the audience, so I'll clarify momentarily, but it was to either get 90-plus points as a team or make it to the wild card. So what do I mean by that? Well, there were a few projections out there saying that the New Jersey Devils were going to get like 90 or so points at the end of the year, but somehow, some way, they were still going to miss the playoffs because people were projecting for the Metro to just be a very tough division. And or the New Jersey Devils will find a way to make the wild card. So if anyone needs that sort of clarification, but I think the New Jersey Devils, they are certainly legitimate. I don't know how much longer this win streak can last. I said it in my previous episode that if the New Jersey Devils won double digits in a row, I'm completely satisfied with that. And whatever happens afterwards happens. But 10 games in a row, it's very impressive. But I do want to give, credit to you guys because you guys are also on a mini win streak yourselves. You've won 2 in a row. You have an overall record of 5-2-3. And you guys have had some tough losses, but it seems like you guys are starting to rebound a little bit more.
Are you concerned, though, at all, Trey, about the Devils being on such a heater so early in the season? Because we've seen teams go on, really impressive runs and then sort of, run out of gas at the wrong time in the season, and then it kind of trickles off. Or
it's kind of happening to Buffalo right now.
Yeah, exactly. Buffalo. Well, yeah, Buffalo is a team I bring up. We've seen it throughout the years, but is that a concern at all for you with this group?
Oh, no doubt. And it's funny you mentioned that, David, because when I was on Locked On Senators podcast, when we were on a 6 or 7 game win streak, I said that I'm being very conservative about how good the New Jersey Devils are. So I'm not going to do a full-fledged episode as to whether or not they're legitimate cup contenders. I'm not going to talk about the playoffs at this point. But it's because the New Jersey Devils are definitely in a good position, but by no means is the battle over. So yes, they've won 10 in a row. Yes, they're first in the Metro at this very current state. But the example that I use, and I'm not trying to be pessimistic towards Devils fans, I'm just trying to be somewhat realistic. I go back to the 2017 and 2018 year campaign in which the New Jersey Devils were first in the Metro during that season in the month of December. And then as the season progressed, they barely made it into the wild card position. And then they got knocked out in the first round by the Tampa Bay Lightning in 5 games. So that's one of the things I always just try to just preach, which is we are hot right now. It's great. And we're definitely, and these points do add up towards the end of the year. I think the New Jersey Devils are in a decent position to make it to the playoffs because usually at around this time, you start to see who are the true contenders for a playoff spot, and you start to see some teams fizzle out. So you start to see the Philadelphia Flyers in the Metro. They got off to a good start, but they're starting to fizzle on down. I said that the Columbus Blue Jackets, they're one of the youngest teams in the NHL. I projected for the Columbus Blue Jackets to honestly get off to a much better start since they had Johnny Gaudreau, but I said that they were going to fizzle on out as the season progressed, and you just mentioned Buffalo. But yeah, so I totally get it. And you're absolutely right. And I saw some sort of pie chart saying that the New Jersey Devils had a 90% chance of making it to the playoffs. But at the same time, it's just it's still very early in the season. And from here on out, and I talked to one of my fellow Devils personalities. He goes by the Brat Pack. He basically has a Twitter cult, and I'll actually tell you guys about it later on in the episode. But all the New Jersey Devils have to do from here on out is just play 500 hockey. That's if they are able to do that and just play somewhat decent as the season progresses, they're going to be just fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Devils are a real solid squad. I think they're just playing some really good hockey. As you noted, they're won 10 in a row. They're 13-3, 6-1 on the road. They're coming in on fire. And, I'm just looking at exactly who's scoring. And it seems like it's been a little bit of a committee-based scoring system for the New Jersey Devils. Obviously, Jesper Bratt has been a big story early on in the season. He's got 21 points through 16 games. We got Jack Hughes operating at over a point per game, same with Nico Hischier. You've got Miles Wood with 6 goals. Dawson Mercer's out there putting pucks in the back of the net. I mean, how big has it been for the Devils this year? And just their forward depth that's been leading the charge here, considering they've been one of the hottest and best goal scoring teams in the league.
Well, it's definitely a collective team effort, but while we're just focusing on the forwards, Nico Hischier is the MVP of this team in my eyes. I know Jack Hughes is the franchise player. I know Jesper Bratt has all the stats to back it up, but Nico Hischier, just what he's been able to do. He went on a 7-game point streak not too long ago. I lost count. He didn't register a point in the last game, so unfortunately it did get snapped. But Nico Hischier just coming up in clutch moments, giving the New Jersey Devils big goals, and just overall being the leader of this team. And he's creating for not only himself, but he's creating for others. So I'm not sure if you guys watch basketball, but it's similar to a dominant player going down the lane. And then what do? They pass it to a 3-point specialist who's wide open because this star player is attracting all the attention. That's sort of what Nico Hischier has been doing, which is he just uses his speed to his advantage. He gets deep on into the offensive zone, and he's able to just find the open man. And he's also a great two-way player, so he definitely holds his weight on the defensive side of things, and the Devils definitely rely on that in that sort of way. So I don't think it would be out of the ordinary until you see Nico Hischier be in the running for the Selke Award at some point.
Ooh, the Selke. That's an interesting little nugget there. The one thing that I am curious about, and New Jersey kind of revamped their goaltending over the course of the offseason. They went out and got Vitek Vanacek to partner up with Mackenzie Blackwood, who right now I believe is still injured, if I'm not mistaken, so he won't be part of the game. But where do you sit with the goaltending right now? I know that the team has outscored a lot of those issues to this point. Is the goaltending stable enough, you think, for this squad to be legitimate contenders this year?
See, this is the part where I say the New Jersey Devils are very vulnerable because Mackenzie Blackwood is out for an extended period of time because he has, I forget what it was. I think it's a strained hamstring or something like that. So something like that. Well,
2 seconds.
Yeah, I really should know that, but it's been a minute since I mentioned Mackenzie Blackwood. But
knee injury, MCL sprain.
Yeah, MCL sprain. There we go. MCL sprain. So he's out from anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks. So he's out for an extended period of time. But Vitek Vanacek has been way better than a lot of people have anticipated, just because when we first acquired him during the NHL draft, I was just like, okay. And you guys are very familiar with my silly season type of episodes during the course of the offseason. I actually did do a silly season episode in which I said that maybe the New Jersey Devils should go after Vitek Vanacek because he's a solid goalie. He's a restricted free agent, so it would have to be done via a trade, but it might come at a cheap penny. And all the New Jersey Devils had to do was just give up a late draft pick for his services. And he's been head above shoulders what the New Jersey Devils have been looking for, but he's still relatively young. He's only been in the league for a few years. So I had my concerns there, but he comes up big, whether it's period number 1 or period number 3. Vitek Vanacek always makes key saves when it matters most for New Jersey Devils. So some ideas that come to mind was our last game against the Montreal Canadiens. The Canadiens got 15 shots on goal in period number 1. It really should have been a 2-0 or a 3-0 game. But Vitek Vanacek was standing tall in between the pipes and making those big saves. Or as a few other games, as the game is very close into crunch time, Vitek Vanacek doing the same thing. So it doesn't matter if it's period number 1 or period number 3, Vitek Vanacek is standing tall. But to answer your question, is it strong enough for New Jersey Devils to compete and, become contenders? I can't really tell you at this point, because here's a name that I'm going to throw out there that you guys probably haven't heard in a while. It's Jonathan Bernier. So Jonathan Bernier was actually supposed to return at around American Thanksgiving time, and we're just a week away from that. Unfortunately, he recently revealed to the press that he suffered sort of a setback injury during training camp. So he doesn't even know when his timeline is going to be for him to return. So we don't have Jonathan Bernier. We have Akira Schmid as our backup goalie for right now. He got his first career win against the Ottawa Senators when he had to replace Vitek Vanacek due to a head injury. So, and it's one of the things I said, like, the New Jersey Devils are very vulnerable at that position because we're missing Mackenzie Blackwood, and he's prone to get hurt at times. And Jonathan Bernier, we have no idea when he's returning. He could return come January, or he might not even return at all. That's a concern right there. But overall, it's just like Vitek Vanacek has been doing a great job so far. I just focus on that, and we'll see what happens as the season progresses. But, yeah, I believe one of the vulnerable positions for New Jersey Devils is the goalie position.
You listen to the Locked On Leafs and Locked On Devils crossover show. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. We're your host of Locked On Leafs. Trey Matthews, the host of Locked On Devils. We'll continue this chat in just a moment, but first, let me tell you about one of today's show sponsors, and that's betonline.net. It's your #1 source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From football to basketball, hockey, soccer, we got it all covered, all at betonline.net. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet online, it's where the game starts. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs, Locked On Devils crossover show. The two squads will be taking on each other tonight in Toronto. You got the Maple Leafs, who've won a couple in a row here, against the Devils, who've won 10 games in a row. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti, Trey Matthews, the host of Locked On Devils, with us today. So Trey, before we kind of get into, I guess, the Leafs perspective of things, I am curious to hear from your perspective. Like, what do the Devils need to do tonight to ensure they keep that winning streak going and get their 11th straight tonight?
They cannot get off to a slow start in period number one, because there's been a couple times, a couple games that come to mind are the Vancouver Canucks game, and also I just recently said the Montreal Canadiens game, which the New Jersey Devils, they don't play a good first period. And quite honestly, those scores should have been like 2 or 3-0 as soon as period number one ended. But I said, like, Vitek Vanacek comes up big, or John Marino on the defensive side of things, able to make a great defensive a stop or help out Vitek Vanacek in that sort of way. But the key for New Jersey Devils is that you cannot allow for the Toronto Maple Leafs to get hot in period number one and get so many shots on goal, because it's one of the things I'm actually a little concerned going into this game, because I don't know how much longer this win streak can last, and the Devils are going to lose at some point. I think you guys can definitely give us a good run for the Devils' money, just because you guys are kind of on a little win streak. You guys have actually been winning more of late. Seems like you guys are picking it up a little bit more. But yeah, that's where my overall stance is, which is the New Jersey Devils, they got to be dominant from start to finish. And if you are trailing, similar to what you did against the Edmonton Oilers, you got to keep it close, and you got to score your goals when it matters most.
And yeah, like the Leafs have won a couple of games here in a row, and they've somewhat switched up their lineup. They've had some lineup adjustments. If your Devils fans aren't watching closely what's going on, they have split up Matthews and Marner, so they're on separate lines. And Dave, I do want to get your thoughts, because this is going to continue after a big night the other night against why am I blanking here? Who did they just beat?
Penguins.
Pittsburgh, thank you. Who did they beat last night? Oh yeah, Crosby, the Penguins.
I got you right there, because I blanked on Mackenzie Blackwood's injury. You blanked on the last team you played for, so now we're even.
There you go. Now we're even. That's right. That's teamwork here with the Locked On NHL Network. Do you like the fact that they're gonna keep these guys apart for a little bit? Did you like what you saw, and hopefully continues in New Jersey, Dave?
Well, yeah, I think when you look at the Devils, they've been doing very well just up and down the board, right? So you're going to have your best lineup out there. And I don't know if having, and I can't believe I'm saying this right now, having Matthews and Marner together doesn't seem like the best lineup for the Leafs. And it could eventually return to that at some point, but I just feel like there's just something amiss with that duo. I don't know what exactly it is. Maybe Tavares really wants to play with Marner, and Marner just put himself in a position where he's like, okay, I'll get myself put on that line. We'll do that. I don't know. Go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to butt in a little bit. This is what I've been preaching for the Devils too, which is don't be too top heavy. Spread out your best players a little bit more, so that way you have more options up and down the lineup. Because the Devils made some interesting line changes before the start of period number two in the last game against the Montreal Canadiens, and actually worked out. Jesper Bratt was playing on the bottom six to try to get Sharon Govich and Boquist going a little bit more. And it kind of worked, and Hughes was paired alongside Haula and Mercer on the second line. So, you're spreading out your offensive weapons a little bit more. And I think splitting up Marner and Matthews in that sort of scenario, I think that could actually work really well for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I'm a big fan of just not being too top heavy on your specific team.
Yeah, I think it spreads out the scoring, to your point, and it also, it'll make the New Jersey Devils have to decide which one do they want to attack, which one do they want to try and shut down, and do they have two lines that can really shut down two effective lines like a Marner, Tavares, and a Nylander Matthews pairing? There's not a whole lot of teams out there that can. Pittsburgh had some troubles with it the other night. So I'm excited to see how that kind of unfolds. And I mean, I think ultimately too, I don't like they just weren't playing as well together. right? Their scoring chances were down. Their goals against were up. Their goals for were down significantly with Marner and Matthews out there together. So I think just a little bit of time apart. We know there's great chemistry already with Tavares and Marner, and then also Nylander and Matthews have some really good chemistry as well. I think that this is something that could work in the short term. Eventually, they'll probably get reunited, I would assume, and then they can get it back going a little bit later on in the season. Trey, I guess we'll give you a chance to ask us some questions, since your listeners might be interested to see from a Maple Leafs perspective how we're viewing this game. So I'll kind of give you the floor, and you can ask away whatever you want.
Okay, so the big question I have for you, it involves a little bit of a silly season type of circumstance during the regular season. But I remember you basically sent this message out to other Locked On hosts because the Maple Leafs were kind of getting off their toes. I got to ask. I'm curious. I just got to ask. I'm doing my job. Okay, so okay. So here it is. So early on in the season, you guys were struggling, and you did say, like, hey, give me your best trade package for Mitchell Marner. Now you guys have
I said that. That came out of my head, my mouth, my typing, my fingers.
Yes.
Oh,
and I got the receipts. Okay.
I remember.
Okay. I'm just asking. Okay, because I'm curious. It doesn't have to revolve around Mitchell Marner, but what's the status of your team? Because I remember we did a silly season crossover during the course of the offseason in which you were offering me a trade package that involved William Nylander and the second overall pick. So I got to ask, like, what's the direction for the Toronto Maple Leafs? Are you guys still trying to, make it out respectfully? Are you trying to still make it out of the first round of the playoffs? Or is it pretty much you got to start over? Because one of the things I said during the course of the offseason about the Toronto Maple Leafs is that window is getting shorter and shorter and shorter to compete. And you seriously might have to start thinking about maybe just trading away big pieces to start over just a tad bit.
Well, they're not there yet, right? They're definitely not there yet. I think we've been talking. It's being deemed as the Matthews doomsday device, doomsday clock, because his contract's up in 2 years, like after next summer. And before that, though, like that's their window to win. Like right now, this is their window to win right now. They're in no means ready to strip it down and start the rebuild or retool. If anything, they'll probably look to add to this team and try and move out some more futures, draft picks, prospects, whatever it is, to try and add to this club to add, to your point, try and get out of the first round since the first time since 2004, but more so make a long Stanley Cup run, because that's what this team wants to do in the next couple of seasons, is make that cup run. There's a lot on the line for this organization this year in particular. If things go south this year, then yeah, there probably will be some conversations about taking a step back and reevaluating things. But this season in particular, and coming into it over the next 6 months, it's must-win time now for the Maple Leafs. So that would be the approach that I think Toronto is taking here through the rest of the season.
I really do think Mike was in a particular zone when he sent out that message.
Well, I don't know how serious the message was. Also, let's make that clear for our listeners. I think it was after I think it was after the California road trip, and I was like, anyone want to trade for Mitch Marner, as like a joke? But yeah,
it's not my joke. I mean, look, a lot of
silly season. That's the point. That's the point of silly season. It's not meant to be taken seriously. It's meant to be fun.
Well, some of the people on this podcast, you go watch the comments down below, and they'll be like, he wanted to trade Marner. Oh, what a terrible, he doesn't even know hockey. We're going to get those comments.
I think, oh, yes, finally, somebody else that wants to trade Mitch Marner.
Okay. Yeah.
But, yeah, no, the Leafs aren't in that position right now. But you don't make it out of the first round this year, I can't see how this team doesn't make any changes, because they've been preaching patience. They've been preaching to stick to the plan. Well, if the plan keeps failing, the plan isn't working. So something has to give. What I will say, though, is one candidate that constantly was thrown into the trade idea with the Leafs was John Tavares. And he's been far. I'm not hearing a lot of that chatter right now. I will say that. So, Trey, keep away from John Tavares. He's sticking around.
Yeah, okay. JT's been electric. He's been electric to start the season. He's had a bit of a renaissance start this year, over a point per game, leading the team with 9 goals. He's been solid so far this season.
I'd say arguably, and this is why I have respect to the Leafs organization, I'd say like on paper, you guys are one of the best Canadian teams because you got Matthews, you got Marner, you got Tavares, you got Riley, you know, you got, and I know I'm missing somebody, but Nylander. Yeah, Nylander too. So it's just like, I'd say on paper, you guys definitely have the assets. You have more great assets than the average team. You just, I'm not a coach or anything. And obviously, you know, I'm not you guys. So I don't like watch the Leafs like consistently, but you know, I just say like, you guys have the pieces to like, just do a little bit better. And I think that's the no duh kind of thing. But it's just like, but, you know, it's just like I say on paper, the Leafs are one of the better Canadian teams out there. Now, I do have speaking of production, I do have a question in terms of offense. So we know what Marner can do. We know what Matthews can do. We know what a few other guys can do. But you guys are still kind of mediocre when it comes to scoring goals. So your goals for over gameplay is 2.94, which ranks 20th in the entire league. However, your defense is pretty solid. That's in the top 10 for goals against. So where does the offense generate outside of your big name players? Who's going to give that production? Because for the Devils, it's the BMW line of Wood, McLeod, and Bastian.
Have you never heard of the name Gino Malgin, Trey? Dennis Malgin. Well, I like in serious, that has been something that the Leafs are still tinkering with. I think ultimately it's going to have to be someone like a Nick Robertson, whether it's, you know, I think he's going to be a key to the puzzle at some point this season. You know, Dennis Malgin has made that fourth line respectable. They're actually pretty good offensively because a lot of teams paid too much attention to the top six, and then the fourth line, they do a good job of generating offensive pressure and offensive chances. But yeah, that like guys like Pierre Engvall, who Mike used to have a man crush on, but now no longer does. If you listen to our last episode, he's someone that has
now Jordy Ben. I now have a man crush on the lumberjack Jordy Ben.
Yeah. So it is true that this is something that the Leafs are going to need come playoff time because the goals do get harder to come by in the postseason, and guys like Engvall, Robertson, Malgin,
the guys who I'm looking at, the guys who I'm looking at, to be honest with you, Dave, you know, I'm still looking at the big boys. Like the reason why they're almost scoring 2.8 goals per game is because Auston Matthews is still sitting at 2 goals at 5-on-5. He's still sitting with a 9% shooting percentage when his career average is 16. Like I'm still waiting on those big boys to start scoring. The depth has actually provided a little bit of scoring here and there, but it's been the main catalyst that have not been getting it going. And we finally saw a bit of an eruption against Pittsburgh the other night, right? All 5 goals that they scored the other night, Trey, were scored by the big 5 goal scorers on that team, which is 1 by Nylander, 2 by Bunting, 1 by Marner, 1 by Tavares. If those guys can get it going all together, and obviously we all know that Matthews is eventually going to factor in here. He's not going to be a sub-10 shooting percentage type of player. And then after that, you know, Kerfoot can jump in with a little bit of offense. I'm still waiting to get a little bit more out of Calle Jarnkrok. Dennis Malgin, you did mention, is a guy who can provide a little bit more offense. The blue line, there's not like a Dougie Hamilton-esque player on that blue line in Toronto. Like Morgan Riley's a good puck distributor and a good puck mover, but he doesn't have the cannon to rip it from the point and score. So they do struggle when it comes to getting some secondary scoring or tertiary scoring from the blue line. But ultimately, Trey, you ask why is this team in the bottom third in goals per game this year? It's because the big boys haven't actually been scoring at the rate that they're typically used to, not necessarily the depth. And once that changes, once that goal barrage comes, I really think this team is going to start winning a lot more games once they start scoring 4 or 5 goals a game like they did a year ago.
All right. So my question, this falls into me too. I want to hear some predictions for the game.
Oh, man. Well, it looks like Toronto's favored in the game tonight, actually. Funny enough, seriously? The home squad, yeah, they're favored to win. And Yeah, they're favored to win tonight. Like minus 150 too. So it's actually like a decently favored. And for a team that's coming in with 10 straight wins in New Jersey, it's a little bit of a slap in the face to Devils fans there. But I think that honestly, Trey, I do think that their win streak stops tonight. I think the Maple Leafs, they figured out a formula that works for their team the other night in Pittsburgh. They finally have a goaltender who seemingly is healthy finally and can play a sound game. And I think he'll be able to do that. In Matt Murray, you had the big boys start to erupt. Can that continue into this game tonight? Ultimately, it's going to come down to, limiting, I think, the speed of the New Jersey Devils. Like, that's a quick team, and that's a team that likes to get on the offensive pretty quickly. Their transition game is unreal through the neutral zone. They have a lot of speed. So Toronto's going to have to play on top of them, be on top of pucks, and just play a sound game. Like, if they get into a track meet here, I don't know if that's going to be necessarily their best bet to win this thing. I think if they can try and grind out like a 3-2, 3-1 game, maybe 4-2 with an empty netter, that would be the least best case scenario for tonight's game. And I think that they can execute that. I really do. So that's going to be kind of my prediction for tonight. And Auston Matthews gets his third 5-on-5 goal of the season in tonight's game as well.
Yeah, these it's weird because I feel like the Leafs play well against New Jersey at home. It's like that's a team. Like I remember the last time it was like they wore those Bieber jerseys. I think was the last time the Leafs played.
Yeah, last March. Yeah, March 23rd they won 3-2.
Yeah, so I'm thinking it's going to be a close game because the Devils are going to want to keep that streak alive. I think it's going to be like a 4-2 Leafs. So I think there's going to be an empty netter in this game.
Also, Toronto's won 8 straight games, 8 straight meetings between these two clubs too. Like they crush the Devils every year. But to your point, Trey, this is a different Devils team, and they present a massive challenge that the Devils haven't really given them in the last 4 or 5 years.
Okay, so I'm a little torn, because I know the Leafs. You guys didn't get off to the start you wanted to, but these next 3 games for the Devils, they got you guys, they got the Senators, and then they got the Oilers. Now, I've been saying in my show, I think the Devils will win against the Senators, but in terms of the Oilers or Leafs, I think they're going to drop one of those games. Now, which team is it going to be? Is it going to be the Leafs or is it going to be the Oilers? I'm going to say my fans are probably going to kill me for saying this, and I hope I eat my words, but I think you're right. I think the win streak stops here for New Jersey Devils because how they've been playing in the first period, especially on the road. You cannot have that against a team of the Leafs caliber because the Leafs are going to be looking at the Devils as a way to get, like you said, get some of their big guys going. So it's been a good run. And I know the New Jersey Devils, they've won 10 straight games. It's been very exciting. I said once they reach double-digit wins, whatever happens, happens. But I'm going to make the prediction saying that the New Jersey Devils will lose against you guys, win against the Senators, and then they'll come away with, I guess, would it be considered an upset if they beat the Edmonton Oilers because we've beaten them before? But I do want you guys to know, don't sleep on John Marino and his overall defensive efforts.
Oh, I'm not, man. That was a steal of a trade by the Devils this summer. Steal of a trade because Ty Smith ain't been it out in Pittsburgh.
He's in the AHL.
That's what I mean. Like he ain't been it.
He's
been there.
Yeah, low light Ty Smith, as I like to call it. But so don't sleep on John Marino. Don't sleep on the BMW line. Like I said, Bastian, McLeod, and Wood, they've put up some solid production. So the score, I'm going to say 3-1. You guys get an empty netter goal. And
you think low scoring as well?
The Devils always keep it like within striking distance. That's the thing. So we've kind of moved away from the 5-2 losses, and obviously that 6-3 loss against the Washington Capitals, in which the advanced analytics showed that the Devils should have won the game, but they didn't. But Mackenzie Blackwood, unfortunately, didn't have his best game in between the pipes, and the defense in front of him didn't help as well. So guys, my fans, you know that the Devils have to lose at some point. You know, we can't win all games in a row, and it's been exciting. But the one thing I will say is, like, the Leafs, the Senators, the Oilers, I'd say the Senators, if I would say that's our best bet of a quote unquote guaranteed win. I'm just speaking because I just got to say this, but I'd say the Senators one is the one we can win with ease. And then between the Leafs and Oilers, it's really a coin flip, but I'd say we're going to drop one of those games.
Yeah, I think it's, that probably would constitute either way as a really good road trip, regardless how it kind of goes. I mean, the team's won 10 games in a row. They're cooking right now. They're on a heater.
I just want to say I think the stat is correct, but the New Jersey Devils are 6-0 when playing against Canadian teams on the road. So I'm just putting that out there.
Well, that would make sense. I mean, they've only lost 3 games. I suppose that would make sense that they've done a really good job against Canadian teams, but they haven't been into Toronto yet. And Toronto's done pretty well at home. Their home record right now, they're sitting at 6-2-1. So they've been all right themselves at Scotiabank Arena, which is where that game's going to be played tomorrow night. Puck drop at 7 o'clock. That'll do it for us here. Trey, really appreciate taking the time to join us. It's always fun to be able to get together, do a little crossover podcast whenever our two clubs meet.
Always a pleasure, guys, and may the better team win.